Yeah. And that was just complete nonsense. I think you simply have an example of a very large and expensive military establishment that over many, many years was reduced in size without making any accommodations with change that new technology, new forms of warfare required. And so it's a very wonderful, small but wonderful tribute to the armed forces of the Second World War and the Cold War. Nothing's changed. And it didn't really matter what we did in most cases when you were dealing with these smaller states where we chose to intervene. We were overwhelmingly powerful. There wasn't a great deal they could do about it. And I think they misjudged Iran. They thought they were dealing with another Iraq or Syria or Saudi Arabia or Libya, and they weren't. And they've gotten an education the hard way. And now, instead of recognizing the limits of our power and the prudent action that should be taken, which is to disengage and get out of this mess, I'm afraid we're doubling down on failure.
Does the Defense Department under Hegseth and the State Department under Rubio, as far as you can see, still view the United States as hegemonic, having total dominance wherever it wants it?
Unfortunately, I think they do now. Let me caveat that, or offer this caveat. They are aware that we are a large and powerful, historically hegemonic power since the end of the Second World War that is in decline. I think they recognize that. We were always struggling for dominance with the Soviet Union. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, we were the last man standing. Our allies had largely disarmed themselves, as you know. And so we were the only ones out there with any significant military power. And I think they became sort of inebriated with power. The results of Desert Storm led them to the conclusion there was no one else out there that could stand against us, and that this was a relatively permanent condition. So we didn't do our jobs, we didn't do our homework. Nietzsche once said that war makes the victor stupid. In other words, winning and winning decisively is almost worse than losing, because you learn nothing and you conclude that you're something you are not. And that's what we did when we embarked on this war with Iran. And I got into a polite disagreement with a friend the other day who was trying to say, well, that General Kane, he tried to talk to the president about the limits of air power and all this sort of thing. I said, wait a minute. Anyone with any sense at all, any professional depth would have said, this is the dumbest idea possible. Mr. President, don't do this. This will wreck your presidency. We will waste time, money, and resources on a campaign we don't need to fight that we can't win, at least not exclusively with air and missile power. But he was an airman, remember? And every airman privately believes that they can ultimately replace everyone in the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, that all they need are airplanes and missiles, and they can do it all. So he wasn't about to say, no, I don't think we should do this. He may have said, we're going to have to, it's going to be tough, but we'll supply the target sets and see how this goes. It should never have started, Judge. It should never have occurred. And you saw this comment that I guess came out of CENTCOM headquarters. I think Larry Johnson was one of the first to break it, that, the CENTCOM commander and his J2, his intelligence officer, were looking for new, innovative ways to punish Iran.
There it is, creative and unconventional ideas. Admiral Cooper sent that to more than 100,000 members of the military.
I mean, if this is not amateur hour on steroids, I don't know what is. Remember, this was not a war that was forced on us. We initiated this at Israel's, insistence, obviously, and the Israel lobby. There's no question about that. But nevertheless, we initiated it. And now we're saying, gosh, we've run out of ideas, guys. We don't have any more good targets. What do you think we should do? This is insane.
Colonel, is the war in Iran effectively over and lost, or is Trump going to extend it so that he has more time for a off ramp?
I think there are two things happening, Judge. At least two main driving forces behind this mechanism. One is Israel and the Israel lobby and the people backing the Israel lobby who put Donald Trump into power with the expressed wish that he take on Iran and destroy it for Israel. Israel's hegemony, its supremacy in the region, cannot be established as long as there is a powerful Iranian state. They misled the president. They presented utter nonsense that he eagerly inhaled. And that's another story, but that's why we got into this to begin with. Now we're dealing with something else that I think affects probably President Trump and probably also President or Prime Minister Netanyahu. It's what I call the gambler's fallacy. If I can just roll one more time, I know I've won before, I can win again. I know this will work. And we are also watching as large numbers of aircraft are being sent back to the theater. And I think before long, we're going to find out that every B-52, every B-1, every B-2 is going to be loaded up with everything they can carry. And we are going to go after Iran with a vengeance in the belief that this time we'll get it right. Now, what most people don't understand is we've already done this for all intents and purposes. I listened to Mike Pence, the former vice president, say, well, we just need to take the gloves off of the armed forces. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. We've already done as much as we can do. But there is this belief, I think, in Trump's head that we can do more. And this time around, we'll get it right. The regime or the government, which I prefer to use, of Iran will collapse. The society will disintegrate. I don't agree with that, but I think that's where we are.
Doesn't the entire international community, diplomatic community, heads of state, recognize that Iran has stymied the U.S. and Israel and may actually be, and please correct me if you disagree, stronger today than it was a year ago, June of 25, when the bombing started?
I think the answer is yes. Now, when you say stronger than it was, I think it is more effective in its military power because they have been resupplied and they have manufactured new weapons and equipment. They've refined their tactics. There's no question about that. They can defend themselves, and they've demonstrated that they can defend themselves at far less cost than anything we would spend, because we're really not interested in defense. We're building an offensive force posture. It's designed to crush everybody anywhere, anytime that doesn't agree with us or doesn't want to go along with us. So, for a fraction of what we spend, the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese have all built various forms of the military power that you've seen in action. And I think the world understands that. And that's going to remove us from the category of global hegemon. And if you listen to some of the retired generals, they aren't talking as much as they did originally about Israel, even though that's the driving force behind everything. They're now saying that if we don't win this, our position as the global hegemon is at risk. Well, no, they're wrong. It's over. Our hegemony is effectively ending. And they think this is a terrible thing, that if we can't control the world is a danger to us. I don't think the world needs to be controlled by us or anybody else, but that's the minority opinion.
Colonel, why should Iran negotiate with the United States? Isn't the core base of negotiation trust on the other side? And Iran obviously doesn't trust the United States. The MOU was ostentatiously signed on international television from the Palace of Versailles by the president himself. He violated it within 24 hours.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate, because you'll recall that I and several other people said when he signed that, and he made the comment, I don't intend to end up as Herbert Hoover and send the world into a global depression, that we all thought this was wonderful. Man gets it. He understands that we're not alone on planet Earth, and that this has terrible consequences for the rest of the people that live here. And that was a great thing. And as you say, it was rapidly turned around. And that's why I say this war is not going to end. Now, why would the Iranians talk to us? First of all, the Iranian government is amenable, I think, to discussions if we want to have them, and we're serious. Right now, they don't see any evidence that we're serious. If you send back the dynamic duo, Kushner and Witkoff, they'll balk and say, "Don't be ridiculous." Maybe if you send Rubio, they might take him seriously, at least initially, although he's certainly viewed as a puppet of the same lobby. I think they would like to see peace restored. I think they want to get back to doing business with the world. Remember, they did not start this war. And I know everybody says, well, they've been at war for us for 47 years. That's nonsense. If anything, I think we're the ones that have been at war with them for 47 years. I remember officers in 1980 talking about the fact that the Iranians were like the Bolsheviks, and they had to be stopped because they'll want to expand. And then we began supporting this man, Saddam Hussein, whom you remember we tried subsequently to remove and eventually did. But we bankrolled him. He built up an enormous army. He inflicted 500, 750,000 casualties, several 100,000 dead on the Iranians, all in an attempt to do what we wanted him to do. So this business of who started what, I think is nonsense. So I think at this point, the population of Iran will not tolerate any serious negotiation. They've made that pretty clear. And yes, the population does have a voice in its government, contrary to what we say.
Colonel, this is a military and economics questions sort of put together. Is it true that the United States has seriously depleted its supply of needed military hardware to a dangerously low level? And is it also true that the United States has depleted its strategic petroleum reserves to a dangerously low level?
Yes. A good friend of mine. I guess we have the problem with the Ed book, and no, we, Chris. I don't know what happened.
All right, I can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm getting an echo from this end. Anyway, a good friend of mine who spent many years in the defense industry made a point the other day in an email to me. He was listening to everybody complain about the failure of the scientific industrial base to produce missiles and essentially meet the president's demands and demands of our military. He pointed something out that I think is very important that we don't mention. First of all, there's never been a declaration of war. Without a declaration of war, you can't arbitrarily mobilize the nation's industries. In other words, you can't do what we did in 1942 and essentially mobilize everyone to produce for military use. So you're stuck with assembly lines, if you will, manufacturing processes that are laborious, that take time. Building Jeep and Sherman tanks is easy. Building complex missiles designed to be launched from aircraft or ships or on land at a great distance with precision, that's a much tougher problem. We're not up to it at this point. And frankly, it's because we went into this half-cocked believing we were dealing with another weak opponent. So the first thing is, yes, we've run through our stocks, and those stocks are dangerously low. Now, secondly, the petroleum issue. This is a big one these days. People are all saying, you said you were going to go into a crisis.